Hello and welcome to Podsongs. I'm Jack Stafford and I interview inspiring people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today I'm speaking with a leader in the field of natural health, Ayurveda and sports medicine. He's the creator of lifespa.com, the leading Ayurvedic health and wellness resource on the web. And he's evolving the way Ayurveda is understood around the world, proving ancient wisdom with modern science. Let's welcome Dr. John Douillard.
You did it. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hello.
Hello.
Well, I just want to start off by saying it's a real honor to speak to you because everyone has, whatever you have an idol or somebody who's helped you on your journey, through their blog or through their YouTube channel or through their teachings, through their books, and you've done all of the above. So
Wow.
Ever since I got interested in Ayurveda, you've been a real shining light there for me, and I really want to just start out by saying thank you for everything.
Well, gosh, you're welcome. That's so kind of you. That's awesome. I'm honored.
No, well, you've done so much. I mean, you, as we're going to hear, I'm sure you'll tell a bit of your story about how you got started. But you were one of the, you're old. I mean, you've been around a long time now.
Tell me about it. I know.
You look about 40, but you're in your 70s. I mean, how old are you now? No, you're not quite that old.
64.
You look well. And you've got 27 children. How many?
Much. Yeah. Six of them.
Only six children. So yeah. you're just a beacon of, what Ayurveda can do for longevity and health. And so maybe you could just, for any audience who just introduce yourself, would be to stop me talking. Introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. My name is John Douillard, and I founded a company called lifespa.com, where it's a website where we take ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda, and then we prove it with modern science, and then I write about it. So if I can find some ancient medical therapy that I can then find science to back it up, I'm going to write about it because I feel like, or do a video about it because I feel like it's so important to realize that this ancient wisdom was really quite profound. And a lot of that has been thrown, by the wayside in the name of, getting the quick fix in modern medicine. And so that's what I write about. And I thought when I first started doing this that I'd write one or two articles and I'd be out of things to write about, that because there wasn't a lot of science to prove all these ancient things. But I think I have over 1,000 videos and 1,000 articles now. And I just keep finding more incredible wisdom that is backed by science, and that's just the most fascinating thing. And I feel like with science alone, you can do anything you want. So coffee's good, coffee's bad, soy's good, soy's bad. Anything you want, you can pretty much prove. But when you have something that's been around for 100 years or 1,000 years as a medical system, and then you have science to prove it, I feel like at least we should look at that. That's something we should become aware of, and then you can decide whether it's something you want to follow. And more often than not, I find that they were very prophetic, and their techniques actually are backed by incredible amounts of solid research, which is what I write about.
No, well, anyone that should just go to LifeSpa and just .com and do all their studying, because that'll keep you busy for this life and the next. So maybe we could just for this episode zoom in on a subject that's quite relevant to a lot of people, even if they don't know it, and that's Agni and Ama, these digestive concepts in Ayurveda, which really affects your immunity and when there's a virus going around, how come maybe there's 5 people in a family and 2 people will get the virus and 3 people won't, but they're living together, eating the same food, living in the same house. So that their internal biome, it affects this. How would you maybe introduce that?
Yeah, more important than ever before. understanding that, Ayurveda talked about bugs and viruses and bacteria thousands of years ago. They couldn't see them, right? Because we still can't see them with our naked eye, but they talked about them as something called krimi. And they said that they're visible ones we can pick off and throw away, little bugs, and there's invisible ones they talked about. And they mentioned how they would address they talked about how they can cause harm, and they're about hygiene, which we now know, right? And how they can cause diseases. But they said the best way to treat them was not necessarily to be killing anything, but to actually change the environment, change the host of the individual who's infected, and also change the host of the actual bug itself. So make it uncomfortable for that bug to stick around. And that's what I find in my practice, is that we do all these things to kill the virus or the agent. And then you have herbs like neem, for example, has been shown to actually protect the skin of your intestinal and respiratory tract from having viruses invade. We have herbs like ashwagandha, that is an immunomodulator, along with turmeric, that matter, that actually has been shown to calm down the immune response. You don't get that overzealous immune reaction that causes the cytokine storms and all these inflammatory reactions. Understanding the circadian rhythms and the circadian clock, melatonin, which is we should produce naturally, but we don't because we're on screens all the time, which affect our production of melatonin. Melatonin is a powerful antiviral agent. Studies show that when you close your mouth at night and breathe, you produce in the paranasal sinuses a substance called nitric oxide, which won the Nobel Prize in 1998 as the panacea molecule that cured everything. So after a day of talking and breathing and interacting with people, you're going to suck in in your airways a lot of weird bugs and potential viruses. Then when you go to sleep at night, if you've been trained properly to sleep properly, which every kid in India, every kid in traditional cultures, Native Americans, they were all trained to tuck their chin, close their mouth while they sleep. So they're breathing exclusively through the nose. And that carries, the nose breathing while you sleep carries this nitric oxide, one of the most powerful antiviral gases that we know of, gets drawn into your respiratory tract, and it kills any weird stuff you breathed in all day by talking and chatting and interacting, right? And this is ancient Ayurvedic wisdom about the value of breathing through your nose and how important that is, and how little we know about it. And I write articles about the research on nose breathing and breath holding and intermittent hypoxia and eating less food, called calorie restriction, also Nobel Prize winning science. The list of what they knew and what we're beginning to research is so profound. And with regard to your immunity, it's a really important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, your book, Body, Mind, Sport, was really a pioneer in nostril breathing. And actually, later this week, I'm speaking to Patrick McEwen about about the nose breathing, who you had him on your podcast. So yeah, we're going to go deep dive into that, and I'll definitely ask him about the immunity. But maybe we could, because these two digestive concepts, Agni and Ama, they're not really explained in Western medicine. So maybe you could go into Agni. What is Agni?
Agni, we call it Agni, but that's the same thing. It means fire, right? It means digestive fire. And it's, one of our first responders for any type of environmental stress or pollutants or pollens or bacteria is the acid in your stomach. And if that stomach acid is weak, then you're going to let some of those bacteria go through the stomach into the small intestine, and that's where they make their money. They get into your small intestine and they infiltrate into your intestinal lining, and then they inject their genetic material into your cells, and then they replicate, and then they explode into your body. But that won't happen if you have strong Agni, strong stomach acid. If you have a pool of acid in your stomach and everything goes in there, it's just eradicated, done, So we have these incredible barriers in our body: the respiratory barrier, a skin lining that's protective, your intestinal barrier protective, your stomach lining protective, your nasal pathways are protective. All these are barriers that protect us, but they've broken down because, I wrote the book Eat Wheat, right? Because everybody says wheat's like the new poison and the new public enemy, and nobody can digest wheat. So all I got to do is eat everything gluten-free. And my all of my problems have been solved. But that's simply not true. You take wheat out of your diet, you're going to have other issues. The reason why people can't eat wheat or nuts or seeds or lectins or legumes is because our digestive strength, our Agni, has been broken down. And as a result of that, those proteins like gluten or fats like greasy fried food or environmental pollutants like mercury from the coal mine plumes, they go into our stomach. And if that's not broken down properly there, they'll go into your small intestine. Those fats and those proteins are going to be too big, like gluten, to get your blood feed a protein. Where do all the proteins and fats go? Right into your intestinal lining, into the lymphatic system, which is like the garbage can. And now your lymphatic system, lion's share of which is around your gut, your intestinal tract, it gets congested. You get extra weight around your belly. Your lymph is trying to deliver fat as energy to every cell of your body. So you get tired because the lymph has got congested. The lymph's trying to carry your immune system. So if that's congested with all these undigested proteins and fats, it gets congested. System that can keep your immune compromised. And of course, the garbage can is overwhelmed with undigested foods and toxins and chemicals because they weren't broken down upstream. So when you take wheat out of the diet, great. You're not going to have the gluten clogging up your lymph anymore. So you won't get the brain fog and the skin rashes and the chronic fatigue and the extra weight around your belly or your hips. And you'll feel like $1,000,000. Like, oh my God, wheat was such a bad thing. Well, unfortunately, wheat is just a hard to digest protein that when you take it out, you feel better, but you haven't fixed the problem by taking it out. All you did was take it out. You still can't digest hard to digest proteins. And millions of hard to digest proteins and fats and environmental pollutants that you have to digest as well. Your ability to digest wheat or any hard to digest food or food intolerance in general is linked to your ability to digest or detoxify well as well. We have in America in 2019, 70 million tons of toxic chemicals were dumped in our environment, which means eventually that ends up in our liver and we got to break it down and digest it. But if we don't have that ability, the liver gets congested. Not to get super technical, but the liver makes bile and the bile does a lot of really cool things. It's like a Pac-Man that gobbles up all the toxins in your liver and cleans your intestinal villi, scrubs them every day for you. It helps you poop and go to the bathroom regularly. But more importantly, it is a buffer for the acid in your stomach. So if your liver got congested because of all the garbage and the environmental pollutants and the pesticides and the highly processed oils they use to preserve all the food that we eat, none of that stuff's digestible, ends up clogging your liver. Liver gets congested, lack of bile flow. Lack of bile flow means your stomach eventually won't make the acid. It just won't make it. Mm-hmm. Or it'll dial down acid production because you dialed down your bile flow. And now you eat something hard to digest like wheat, which requires a strong digestive acid. You don't have what it takes. That gluten goes undigested in larger quantities than ever before into the small intestine, into your lymph, creates all these lymph things, brain fog. They link it to Alzheimer's and all that. But when you eat the whole grain, studies show it'll reverse or decrease Alzheimer's risk significantly. It'll lower your blood sugar, lower the risk of heart disease. And studies show you eat wheat, not that I'm trying to sell wheat. It's just wheat's an example of a hard to digest thing. But wheat, when they took a study with people who ate wheat and people who were gluten-free, the people who were gluten-free had 4 times more mercury in their blood than people who ate wheat. They had significantly more bad bacteria in their gut and significantly less good bacteria in their gut. And they also had significantly less killer T cells than the people who ate wheat. So here's the thing. Wheat and nuts and grains and lectins and nightshades and goitrogens and oxalates, all these hard to digest things that we say, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat. They provide an irritant or a stimulant, a hormesis that actually triggers the body to respond in a positive way. And the reason we have gut immunity, which is 70% of our immune response, is because of those hard to digest foods. And if you just start taking them out of your diet one after another because I don't do dairy very well. I don't do wheat very well. I don't do oats or grains or nuts or seeds or beans or legumes well. What's left? All this super easy pre-digested food, baby food that provides no stimulation or excitation of your gut, which is what hormesis means, excitation, to give you the immune response you need to live on this planet. So we become weaker, organisms as a result of trying to go down the road of, that makes me feel bad, so I don't do that anymore. This makes me feel bad, I don't do that anymore. Like Wim Hof's thing with the cold, right? Going into the cold. So brilliant, really, because, as you get older, you need 1, 2, 3, 4 blankets on you all the time because you're always cold, right? But now, if you start training your body to be comfortable, to be acclimated to the cold and not resistant to the cold, all kinds of magical things happen in your body. Same with wheat, same with dairy, same with exercise, same with so many different things. And that's what Ayurveda is really about. Ayurveda is about understanding that these foods come in seasons, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that
every day of the year.
Yeah, you're very big on seasonal eating. You really promote that as a natural way to cure.
Like this time of the year, amylase, which is an enzyme for wheat and starch, is increasing in our bodies, all of us, at this time of the year. So that means that, which I think is really cool, right? Because the wheat's harvested right now. We're harvesting wheat as we speak, which means, and you get more amylase to digest it this time of the year. And in the spring, when there's no starch to be harvested at all, you get very little amylase. So we're seasonal beings, and we have to live in sync with those rhythms. So understanding that your gut bugs are supposed to change from one season to the next is so critically important. They did a study with deer, and they found that when deer ate leaves in the summer, they had bugs for eating leaves and digesting leaves. And then when they had bark in the winter, they had different bugs for digesting bark in the winter. And in the study, they said if they gave the deer the bark in the summer when they had the wrong bugs for bark, they would cause such a level of indigestion it almost killed the deer. So to think that deer, when they eat out of season, they almost die. What about us? We have no connection. Now, talking study after study, a big study was just published in Nature magazine last week on seasonal eating and the benefits of seasons. Stanford University published one about a year and two ago. The research is finally coming in about what Ayurveda said for thousands of years. You should eat what's in season because the bugs from the soil inoculate your gut and they boost immunity in the winter. That's now just been published. They decongest you in the spring. They help you dissipate heat in the summer. So you have to change. Otherwise, you end up eating, if you just eat, wheat every day of your life, you're going to get bugs in your gut that are really good about taking the sugar out of the wheat or the starch or the bread and delivering it into your bloodstream. And we have a culture of, an epidemic of diabetes, where if you listen to nature, you would not get any starch or sugar in the spring. In fact, bugs that digest fat and fiber increase in the spring in your gut, and bugs that digest carbohydrates increase in your gut in the fall. Now, when all the fruits and all the starchy vegetables are being harvested, it makes perfect sense. We don't overwhelm the body with carbs and carbs and carbs and carbs. And then the antidote in our mainstream was, let's just do keto and just completely flip it to another extreme, which is like, wait a minute, that's not the message. The message was get in rhythm, circadian rhythm, because that's Nobel Prize winning science as well. Don't just go from a high carbohydrate diet that gave you so many bugs that made you fat and give you diabetes to a ketogenic diet. And the only culture in the world that eats a ketogenic diet are the Inuits above the Arctic Circle, and they have acquired express a gene to actually not let them stay in ketogenesis for any length of time. So you ask the question, why is it that the only culture that naturally eats a ketogenic diet, a high-fat diet, has a gene to not let them stay there? It's sort of like maybe we're not supposed to be there long-term, because in nature, there's cycles. And I don't understand why that concept is so hard to grasp, because everybody just goes from one extreme to the next best-selling extreme. So if you're on a carb diet, then you go to a keto diet, you're going to feel better for a while, right? But it's not going to be something that's going to be sustainable. And that's why Ayurveda is like, let's just connect with the rhythms of nature. I mean, this is what the birds and the animals do. They migrate. Everything's in sync. and we've lost that connection, and Ayurvedas are really about getting that back.
Yeah, all these fad diets are like a broken clock. They're right once a year. So you can do ketogenic diet in the spring, and then the raw food diet in the summer, or when the food is cooked on the trees. And so it's like it's your Agni is varying, because the bacteria is part of your Agni. So in the summer, your Agni is a lot lower, because if you had a huge fire in your belly, you would overheat. You would sweat. So, but in the winter, you need a huge fire in your belly to keep you warm, and also to digest all these incredibly hard to digest foods, which give you the strength, like wheat. And so,
right. And the science proves that. The science shows that the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system is stronger in the wintertime. We have significantly more bugs in our gut in the winter than we do other times of year, because those bugs provide diversity and therefore immunity. So the science completely bears out that old ancient Ayurvedic concept that your digestion is stronger in the winter to digest bark or nuts or seeds or meat or grain, which are more available, and less strong when in the summer, when the foods are being cooked on the vine. You don't need to cook them inside of you, otherwise that would overheat you. And that's one of the reasons why we made it as Homo sapiens, is because we figured out a way to dissipate heat out of our body. And one of those ways was to not have this major winter fire of digestion burning in the savannas of Africa when it's 110 degrees or something.
Yeah, you make these really nice charts for the seasonal diet. And when I lived in the city, I tried to use them. And it's very difficult in the city, because you go into the supermarket, and if you want tomatoes in January, they're there. They're all the foods are there. The melons there in the winter. So, but when I live to the countryside, I live in the south of Italy now, and it's very clear, because you get your food on the local market, and they sell what they grow. So now you've got broccoli coming in, and you have fava beans in the spring, and I'm always in the cycle of these foods. And there's loads of fruits. When the fruit's on the trees, you go and pick out, because it's there. So it's much easier. Yeah. When you're not.
So in the south of Italy, I wonder, is it still like that, where you go to the one shop for your vegetables, and one shop for your cheese, and one shop is the butcher, and you can't just go to a grocery store? I know in France it used to be that way, and it's becoming more big supermarkets, which are industrial. But I wonder, Italy was resisting that, and I wonder if it's still that small town vibe where you get that local food all the time naturally.
Well, there's the huge supermarket there in town if you want to go to it, so everyone can go.
Yeah.
But there's loads of the farmers market, and so that's bio food. We don't have nice fancy farmers market with somebody playing the violin and someone doing some mime. We just have the ordinary market, and so that food's cheaper than the supermarket, and so that's bio. So that's a good point about it. But you can get and you get people, so you get the olive oil from the people that who are making it. So it's kilometer zero. And so it's very good. You'd love it.
Yeah, I'm sure I would. I love it. I know my wife would love it too. She's like already on the plane.
But to finish off Agni is, so people think that everything they eat, they absorb. So if they're eating healthy, if you're eating the healthy fruit, the healthy fruits and the healthy vegetables and the vitamin supplements, and you're packing all this stuff in, but if you're not metabolizing it, it can start to accumulate in the body and create these toxins, which is Ama. So the other side of this Agni Ama. So maybe you could go into what Ama is in Ayurveda, because I don't think they get it in Western
Ama
medicine.
It means undigested food, right? Foods that weren't properly broken down. And in Ayurvedic medicine, the food that we eat is properly digested, and it's actually termed something called ahara rasa, and rasa means lymph. And the study of rasa is rasayana, which is one of the 8 branches of Ayurveda, which is the study of longevity. So the study of longevity is the study of the lymphatic system, which is pretty cool. And the beginning of the lymph fluid takes place in your stomach with a really good stomach fire and acid that creates this ahara rasa that breaks down the nutrients in a way that can deliver the fat as energy to every cell of your body via your lymphatic system to make sure the proteins were properly digested so they go into your blood and not into your lymph and clog up your lymphatic system. And that's the ahara rasa. So the ama, when you make it because of weak digestion, those proteins and fats will clog up your rasa, which is the lymph that lines your intestinal tract. And the lymph system is quite fascinating. I have many articles on the lymph and a free ebook on the lymph. But there's lymphs in your brain that drain 3 pounds of plaque and lymph out of your head every year while you sleep. There's the skin-associated lymph. So when people get lymphy, their skin itches or becomes rashy. They have lymph around their belly, gives them a big bloated belly. The lymph can store into the fat around your belly, into your hips for cellulite. The lymph is also draining your reproductive system prior to menstruation. Women do a premenstrual detox through the lymphatic channels. So prior to their menstruation, if the lymphs are already blocked up because of poor digestion and you're dumping waste premenstrually into the already congested lymphatic channels, women get more PMS-like symptoms. Their breasts will swell, they'll break out, they'll get tired, they'll get irritable. And that's just because the body's, supportive detox process of menstruation is compromised. And because you're dumping waste into an already congested lymphatic system. So that's all ama at work, really, is what that is. And when you back up to where the ama starts, it's the coordinated effort between your stomach making acid, your liver making bile, your pancreatic and duodenal enzymes. That's the upstream digestive agnis. They all work together to get you to break it down properly. And if that works, you're home free. Your bowel movements will be good. The intestinal skin will be healthy and it will maintain the environment so the right bugs can proliferate in your gut. You keep dumping undigested food in there, pesticides, cooked vegetable oils that are preservatives that can't be digested, that normally fats are feed the bugs, but these oils they put them in bread and the bread never gets hard anymore because the bugs won't eat that oil. So we eat that bread and all that oil basically won't get digested. The bugs won't eat it. So where does it go? To your liver, and from your liver to your lymph. And then that's ama at work, again, just being dumped into different parts of your body. And that's why we have to, Ayurveda said, I think quite prophetically, that 85% of the diseases come from digestion. So we troubleshoot every nook and cranny of digestive strength and making sure there's no weak links because they sneak up on you. You go, I don't eat wheat anymore because it makes me feel bad and I feel much better now. So I don't eat greasy fried food. I ask people all the time, how do you feel when you eat greasy fried food? They go, oh my God, I have no idea. I haven't eaten that in so long and it's so bad for you. And I go, I know it's bad for you, but if you could eat it when you were 18, right? But now you can't eat it anymore. What happened? It's bad for you, but it's a challenge food. And if you can't eat greasy fried food and handle it with no problem, how are you going to do the mercury from the coal mine plumes or the 70 million pounds of toxic fat soluble environmental pollutants dumped in the environment every year? You're just not gonna. And then slowly it goes, where does it all go? Into your digestion, into your lymph, into your liver, into your fat, to your brain, out your skin as an exit ramp as rashes, into your fat, into your joints as arthritis, into your brain as cognitive decline issues, memory issues. All that's very logical. It's not like you have a brain and then you have a digestion and you have your joints and they're all separate. They're all working together, and you can't look at them as separate. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda. They look at the body as a whole and not as a disease or a condition, as a body that is manifesting this condition as a better option than it had, doing something else. So those imbalances are not problems. They're the body saying, hey, this is a problem over here, but it comes from over here. And you gotta create the storyboard to understand why my joint problem is linked to my heartburn, or why my heartburn is linked to my asthma, or where my constipation is linked to my sleep apnea. They all connect.
But those are separate departments in the hospital. You have to go and so there's all these subdivisions of ama, so you said undigested food, but it could be also cholesterol in the arteries, brain, brain plaque, plaque on the teeth. This for every Agni there is an Ama, no, an undigested.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. That should be mapped out, because it's absolutely very, very real. I think there's a lot of genetic issues there, like how we are wired genetically to process these impurities. Some of us are really good at, maintaining good function of your bowel movements, but your joints are falling apart,
Because the people also think, well, the toxins, if I'm fat, just fat people that have the toxins. But I've known, fit runners, athletes, cyclists, and you look at their tongue and it's this thick white coating on there, because they're never hungry. They're always eating straight after a workout. They're eating sugary foods, gels during the workout, and then they're carbo loading. So, they're not detoxing. They're even if they look thin and muscly, they still have Ama lodged in the tissues.
Yeah. And I had a patient this morning. It was interesting. She said she was no digestive problems whatsoever, perfect digestion, but she's also gluten free. And I said, well, why are you gluten free? She said, well, when I got off of gluten, all my joint problems went away. And I said, okay, that's a very common situation, So if all your joint problems go away when you stop eating wheat, it would be really good to ask the question, what's the connection between wheat and my joint problems, right? And that's because I wasn't breaking the wheat down properly. It was ending up in an undigested form, ended up in my lymphatic system, clogged my drain. My lymph is my drainage system of waste and toxins. It's the garbage can system. And if it is not functioning optimally, toxins and impurities and waste will build up in and around the joints, and you get joint problems. Take away the wheat, you feel much better. But we haven't fixed the problem, which is the underlying digestive issue that allowed you to not break down the wheat. And who knows and what else is not being broken down is the $25,000 question, which really important when you're going into your 60s, 70s, and 80s in the second half. When you're in the first half, like the athletes, you can do whatever you want. You can eat whatever you want. You get through the first half, no problem. As soon as you hit 50, now you're in the second half. Now you got to make it right. You got to fix the real reason. Otherwise, you end up on pills and powders or drugs for the rest of your life. And that's just what they call dependent longevity. Your longevity is dependent on this pharmaceutical, which has side effect after side effect. And you need a pill for the side effect. And then, it just becomes a bad way to end your life.
Yes, for sure. So there's this build-up of bad habits that Ama doesn't just, you don't get it after one, fish and chips late one night, but you get it from, regularly eating late, eating an early breakfast, drinking lots of cold water, ice water. What are some of the other ways that you've noticed these bad habits people have?
There's an old saying that if you eat standing up, death looks over your shoulder.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one.
He's a lot taller than you.
Yeah, right. And we now know that when you sit down and you relax and eat your food, the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system increases, and the fight or flight, get up a tree, save your life, don't order any pizza while a bear's chasing me, the nervous system starts to dial down. But if you're running and stressed out all the time, your nervous system is predominating with the system that's saying, literally, don't digest this food. But if you relax, that the rest and digest system increases and allows you to actually digest your food. Super simple things like that we don't do. We sit in front of the TV watching a scary movie and our hands are sweaty, whatever it is. We're eating, watching, sitting there eating this incredibly hard to digest stuff in movie theaters. While you're watching, while your heart's pounding, because a lot of these movies are quite action based. And your heart's pounding, and then you're feeding all this food. There's just no way that's going to digest. And there's just good science behind that.
Well, it's also people eating a lot when they've no hunger. I know some people say, I'm never hungry, but they still eat 3 meals a day and snacks, but they just have such a low level of hunger that it just kicks in slightly and then they eat. But if you eat with a real hunger, then that half an hour, your stomach, you're burning up something, and that's cleaning out the Ama.
Right. Well, in between meals, I always say, have a big enough breakfast to get you to lunch, and then have a lunch, make it big enough to get you to supper, and supper big enough to get you to breakfast with nothing in between. Because in the in-between period, if you have a breakfast and then a snack and a lunch, you're going to burn the snack. If you have, breakfast and a handful of almonds and then lunch, in between breakfast and lunch, you're going to burn the almonds. If you have nothing between breakfast and lunch, you're going to burn your fat. Same thing between supper and breakfast. You have a snack before you go to bed, you're going to burn the snack before you go to bed. But the idea is to continue to help our body be a better fat burner, because stress helps us to store fat, gain weight, reserve the fuel. And we're under a lot more stress. So we have this kind of chemistry of, protective, reserve fuel chemistry, where we really want to do is give our body a chance to sit down, relax, have a nice relaxing meal, leave the table comfortable, and then have energy from that meal to go to the next day. A lot of folks say, well, God, if I eat a big meal like that, I'll fall asleep. So therefore I have little meals, so you have a little meal, little meal, little meal, little meal, little meal, and then you have enough energy to get through all the meals. But then you got to go to bed, right? And now the body goes, okay, now we're going to sleep for 8 hours. And the body goes, wait, my feeding schedule is every, hour and a half. How am I supposed to make 8 hours last with no food? So you wake up and you start getting insomnia and sleep issues. It's just all logic, right? But if you start training the body to make longer trips, then all of a sudden sleeping becomes deeper and you get that real deep sleep, that REM sleep, that rejuvenative sleep that a lot of people don't get anymore because of so many reasons. Like I just said, the lights, the lack of melatonin, the stress, the screens, all these things keep us a little bit more wakeful. But if we don't, allow ourselves to get into that deep sleep based on major levels of melatonin, you don't get the benefit of melatonin, which is longevity, youthfulness, rebooting your precursing your glutathione, your liver detoxification, changing your microbiome. It's been shown to reverse breast cancer, reverse osteoporosis, just a little bit of melatonin. Not a hormone, it's a molecule. But it's a molecule that connects us to our circadian rhythms. And when you use melatonin properly, you reset those circadian clocks and you get all kinds of protective benefits against longevity. It's absolutely part of the longevity strategies is to know, what state of affairs your circadian clocks, which are in every cell of your body, are in. And if they're clicking and turning on and off at the wrong times, you're a mess. So you're going to be like I'm eating when I'm not even hungry. I go to bed. I don't sleep. I wake up and I don't go to the bathroom. I mean, there's just no rhythm,
Yeah, that's the modern. These bad habits is the real problem with modern society. So one of the ways you can notice the ama is that I've noticed is lack of appetite. So not hunger, but also the white coating on the mouth, on the tongue of the mouth. I've noticed it's very sticky saliva that you get on your toothbrush and things like that. What are some of the other warning signs that people can look for ama?
I think extra weight around the belly, you start to have that happen, feeling tired in the morning, stiff in the morning, it takes a while to get the bones moving in the morning kind of a thing.
Lethargic.
Not waking up refreshed, being tired after meal, finishing your day without the energy that you started with. At the end of the day, feeling like, oh my God, I feel like I was hit by a bus or a truck and I'm just so exhausted at the end of my day's work. I need to go home and have a, glass of wine or just relax or meditate or do my yoga because I don't feel right until I get that done. That's not what yoga or wine or meditation was about. They were designed to help, yoga and meditation were designed to create self-awareness, to help us be more introspective, as opposed to being used, what they use for now as a stress reduction technique. And that's because we have created a culture that incurs stress throughout the day, then we got to shovel it out at the end of the day. That's how it works. But if you start living in sync with the natural cycles, you don't feel exhausted at the end of the day. You finish your day with the same energy you started, and you feel great on the weekends. You have abundance amount of energy. When I first went into practice, I was 27 years old. And I remember at the end of my workday, I was so tired, but I just I can't believe this is going to be the rest of my life, seeing patients and being so burned out at the end of every day. And I went to an Ayurvedic doctor. It was my first Ayurvedic consultation. And he looked at me and he said, took my blood pressure when it was high. I was 27. I meditated. I was doing triathlons, very active, very physical fit, and meditating, yoga, all that. But I had high blood pressure. And he looked at me and he said, what do you have for lunch? And I go, well, I have a busy practice. I have a breakfast in the morning, big, and I have something on the run, on the go, because I'm always late for lunch. And then I have a big dinner. And he looked at me and he said, go home and have a nice warm cooked meal in the middle of the day. You'll never have high blood pressure again. I thought he was nuts, right? Mm-hmm. But turned out that I actually listened to him, did it. I did a little clinical study in my practice, proved it, and now it's hard science. If those circadian rhythms, you eat at the wrong time, you're going to pay a price, because the middle of the day when you eat your food is the most important digestive time. That circadian rhythm wise is when your digestion is the strongest. In the afternoon, it makes sense that your brain and nerve to activate is your brain. But most people go, are you kidding me? In the afternoon, I'm scared. I'm so lethargic. I'm so exhausted, right? So as a result, people crave their coffee and their dark chocolate in the afternoon. But if you eat properly and deliver that energy, you should get energy in the afternoon. But if you're crashing in the afternoon, that's an emergency fight or flight degenerative stress that you're incurring day in and day out and day in and day out. And however you're genetically predisposed to break down, you're gonna. And that's what happened to me. I was genetically predisposed to blood pressure, and now my blood pressure is extraordinarily low. In fact, I have to remind myself to eat salt to get my blood pressure up, because I don't do that. Because when you eat healthy, you don't eat all the processed food, you don't get any salt, because that's what processed food is salt, basically. So I have to remind a lot of my patients who are really healthy, I gotta remember to add salt, because good salt, of course, but and then your blood pressure will become too low if you don't have enough of those electrolytes.
Because that's what all the diets are focused on, is what you eat. But I think what people can take away from this is how you eat is much more important.
Yeah, relaxed time in rhythm. Having your meals in rhythm, and then of course the science of calorie restriction, eating a little bit less food. Studies show that if you eat, Americans are really good at eating, right? We eat 100% of the food that we need, and then we go on, the average person eats another 100% of the food they don't actually need. And then they did calorie restriction studies, and they took 30% away. So now they had still 70% more than they need. And all these magical things began to happen: longevity, blood pressure, blood sugar, heart, weight loss, cardiovascular benefits, cholesterol, all that got significantly better in such profound ways that they still call calorie restriction one of the most profound ways to help get healthier. Just simply eating less, a little bit of
more energy by eating less. It's strange.
Yeah, because you're going to burn the other source of fuel, which is the fat. Yeah. When we eat so much, we're eating all this, we get one source of fuel, which is carbs, and we don't get the fat. So we don't force the body to burn that fat, so we get fat.
So bringing this back to the immunity and how the Agni and Ama affect it, because particularly with these viruses, that the young people are not so affected because they have better Agni and less Ama. I always try to explain it to people like the Ama with like a Petri dish gel, the culture medium that you need to have something for it to grow in, no?
Yeah.
And if you have this,
that's a good point.
If you have this huge fire, it's just going to get, there's nowhere for it to live, no food for it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great analogy, and where really troubleshooting your digestion and not sweeping it under the rug, pretending like it's all okay. Don't let these things linger, and then of course for COVID, really make sure you keep your vitamin D levels up. And this is pretty much now hard science. I wrote an article back in 2013 when H1N1 came out, and it was science showing that they were at higher risk. Black and brown folks were at higher risk for, intensive care issues as a result of low vitamin D. The understanding of vitamin D has been around for a very, very long time. It's only now, a study just came out yesterday and another one 2 weeks ago. I don't understand, I'm shocked why it is not on all the major networks that everybody should be taking, a significant amount of vitamin D to get their numbers between 50 and 80 nanograms per milliliter, where you get that robust immunity. Your killer T cells are dependent on vitamin D as their major fuel. You don't have enough vitamin D in the system, your killer T cells will not engage. And that's really important. So that's the other pieces in the wintertime, particularly the winter as we're going into it. Make sure you're getting adequate levels of vitamin D. And for most folks, it's about 4,000 to 5,000 international units per day in the winter to get your numbers above 50. But get your vitamin D levels checked and make sure that you're taking the right amount. And that's really important because, the darker your skin, the more sun you need. And in the winter, there's no sun for anybody. There's no UVB rays for vitamin D production for anybody in the winter north of basically Atlanta, which I don't know what that is in Europe.
Well, I'm all right. I'm okay.
Yeah, you're probably okay. But you can check you go to there's a UV finder, and everywhere you can just type in UV finder on your website search bar. And if it's over 3, excuse me, if the UV level is over 3, you can get vitamin D. But if it's under 3, which happens in the winter, a lot of places, you won't get any vitamin D from that. And so it's really important to kind of have some radar on the sun, right? Because the sun's what got us here. And we stay inside and we avoid it as much as possible now. And that's can turn out to be a really, really bad idea. And
do you have to take vitamin K as well, did I hear you say?
Vitamin K, I think vitamin K2, which is the vitamin K. It has matrix proteins that actually take the calcium from, and they direct it from your arteries into your bones. So it delivers it to your bones for bone density issues. And in one study, 96% of Westerners were deficient in vitamin K2. And it's pretty interesting that you take dairy, which most traditional cultures fermented the dairy into ghee or yogurt or cheese or whatever. And then nature's way of making sure that all that calcium didn't go to your arteries and clog you up and kill you was to give a high level of vitamin K2, which has proteins to escort that calcium to your bones and not to your arteries. Just how beautiful nature was, right? To make sure dairy would be okay. But people don't eat fermented dairy very much anymore. And a lot of the cheese we get is super highly processed and it's not very good. So, so 96% of folks are deficient in vitamin K2. So it's really important to get your vitamin K2 and your vitamin D for your bone health. And by the way, melatonin too has been shown to reverse osteoporosis. So we were talking about that. That's on the list as well.
Is that fascinating? So all these, you see the statistics of the people suffering with the virus, but when you look at it through an Ayurvedic perspective, you can see you have a lot more understanding, and a lot more insight.
Yeah, like I said before, it's just so beautiful how it all just connects, and that's the magic of this organism we have. How nature was so entwined with our rhythms, the rhythms of the plants that are being harvested and the bugs that are attached to those plants and the seasons and the cycles and us and our physiology. It's all one system, and it's like a big poem, it's like poetry. And that's so when you get into it, as I think you have studying Ayurvedic medicine, you just become so overwhelmed by the profound insight they had and how we all connect and how important that is.
Yeah, you inspired me. I studied to be a practitioner. I did an online course to be an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I thought I was going to be a doctor like you. But then when I started to practice it, I found that I didn't have your patience for patients. When I kind of, now I look back on it, it's something that it should be taught in primary school. It's so everyone should do it, and then to go back and to explain it. I mean, how do you keep the energy when every day you have people come into you with problems that are just so obvious to you now to fix? How do you maintain that enthusiasm?
Well, like I said, when I first got in, I was so tired, and then I kind of reversed that. And now I don't get tired at all. I feel like every patient, I really, truly, honestly feel honored to be able to. I mean, I don't have to be in practice anymore because my website's doing well, and I'm old and I don't, probably should be retiring soon. But I love it so much, the connection, and I learn so much by listening. I think that's a big part of our culture that's lacking, is nobody listens anymore so I have this experience where I get to listen carefully to what people are saying and then try to connect those dots and help them understand not just what the problem is and how to fix it, but where it came from and how many years ago it started. And it's incredibly beautiful. Everybody's got their own storyboard, and it's quite fascinating. And I can't imagine myself stopping to see patients. I used to do them, from 8 in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, 5 days a week. I don't do that anymore. But I do still see patients 3 days a week and love it. Absolutely love it. I have more time for writing now, but yeah.
And what's your next project then? What are you else are you working on?
Actually, I'm doing a course called Conscious Longevity with a company called Shift Network, which is going to be a live video, 6-module video training. So it'll be a live course we're going to produce on conscious longevity, which is all about not just living old, but to be conscious, which most of us aren't. Studies show that we 95% of the stuff we think and say and do as adults is based on experiences that we experienced in the first 6 years of our life. So that's pretty bad if we're, as adults, functioning from our impressions from very, very early on. We're quite unconscious. In Ayurveda, the yoga, the breathing, meditation was all about waking us up so we can let who we truly are out, as opposed to, walling off our delicate parts, our sensitive and most powerful parts, and then just engaging in behavior to get you to like me or you to want, to tell me how wonderful I am. It's such a weird manipulation of our species where Ayurveda was all about, no, man, you got to take a risk to go through some of that fear, let the armor fall, let who you are out, and take a risk to be yourself and let the chips fall, I wrote an article about epidemics in Ayurveda not too long ago. I don't know if you caught that. And it was an article that I took from Charaka, which was written 2,500 years ago, the number one Ayurvedic textbook. And it was about pandemics and about what happens in a pandemic. And if you go to that article and read it, I think you'll be fascinated by it. But the bottom line was that they said quite clearly in these exact words, and I actually just decided to quote the ancient text because my words interpretation wasn't good enough. And this is me paraphrasing, but it said that the reason for an epidemic is because of corruption at the highest states of government, and how that filters down into the people, where the people become corrupt and they lose their integrity and they start telling lies. And those lies begin to affect what we do to the soil, what we do to the environment. And then all of a sudden the birds won't drink the water, and the winds don't blow, and the sun gets too hot, and there's no rhythms of nature. They made a very distinct connection between our thinking and how our thinking not only affects the physical, has physical replications on the soil and the environment, because we make bad choices for money to pollute the environment, but also energetically, just the corruption itself has an impact, which is now modern science. Like, in other words, if I'm lying to you, I'm creating a vibration of dishonesty into the environment. And you might go, oh, that's a bunch of hoopla, right? But now we have studies that show that there's things called biophotons, which are communication molecules inside of you and me that blast around the universe, and they're communicating inside of me and from me to you as we speak. And they found that these biophotons communicate information, and they're affected by intention. So if my intention is to love you, then that biophoton is going to bring that attention and a coherent flow of these energetic particles to your body. They did a study with a chimpanzee, and they radiated this chimpanzee and had all this radiation damage. And they put a healthy chimpanzee next to it, and they measured the biophoton flow. And they found that within 48 hours, the chimpanzee that was healthy had more radiation damage than the other chimpanzee, because the biophotons delivered the radiation to the other chimpanzee. It's a well-published study. Point being is that what we think matters. What our integrity, how we maintain our integrity, it really does matter. And it matters for our own health, because if we carry the lie, we feel bad. But it's not just inside of this body. There's well-studied information particles that affect the environment, the rhythm of nature. We're all one system. We can't ignore that anymore. Nobody knows that, but it's hard science, which is why prayer works. People pray. They go, people say, oh, prayer's stupid, doesn't have any. It has hard science behind it. It doesn't work all the time, But when it does work, it works quite phenomenally. And that's because of the coherence of the biophotons is the newest research. If you're coming from a coherent, really pure place, you're going to create really pure, coherent biophotons, which can deliver intention, as Einstein said, at spooky distances, where, at the speed of light, and simultaneously over vast, distances, it happens. These are particles of light. So it's boom, fast the speed of light. It's crazy science. Ayurveda was all over that thousands of years ago. We have yet to really bring that home, which is what I do these days. I'm keep reeling in this incredible wisdom and going, my God, there's science about that too. There's science for prayer, and there's mechanisms that understand why it works. Pretty powerful.
So that's fantastic. No, I'm so glad you segued into that, because I wanted to ask you about the spiritual aspect, because I started on my road to Ayurveda, and I studied a lot, and I went to India, and I wasn't into the spiritual aspect, but then I got into the yoga, into metaphysics, and the prayer and the mantra, and the pranayama, and how it actually affects your many bodies. And I didn't believe in all of that, the spiritual stuff, but now I've kind of got into that a lot more, and the reincarnation and the spirit worlds, the astral worlds. And you come back here, you go back there, you come back here, you go back there. And I was studying Ashtanga Hriddiyam, and there's a lot in there about demons and possession and discarnate entities, and I was thinking, they either were wrong, which is highly unlikely. I mean, they did write all this, or that they don't exist anymore. Or see that there is this, like you say, this energetic spiritual world which we're not aware of, because we've been blinded by our materialistic existence. So that's fantastic that you're talking about how, as you do with everything, about how modern science, proves even prayer power and spiritual energy.
Yeah. What I've written lately a lot of articles on breathing and pranayama, and quite fascinated by that. And so I did, articles on Bastrika and, Kapalabhati and Ujjayi and chanting and Brahmari, all these different Ayurvedic breathing techniques. And what I found was that the common denominator of all of them, there was a handful of common denominators, but one of the most powerful was neuroplasticity, which means all of these breathing techniques change brain waves. They change the neuroplasticity, which is we hold on to, and this is now hard science as well, we hold on to impressions from our childhood in our brain. We actually write them into the white matter of our brain, so we don't ever forget that going into that cave, I was chased by a lion, and I'll never go into that cave again. So we remember those stresses. So it's the species survival thing, right? You never want to forget that. So we record those in parts of our brain. And Ayurveda was like, that creates kind of a level of unconsciousness, because we're basing all of our actions based on that lion coming out of me when I was 8 years old, or my dad being mean to me, or whatever happened, some traumatic event when I was a child, parents died or whatever. And now, so what the breathing techniques do and the chanting does and all that is actually creates a vibration that actually creates neuroplasticity, allows you to rewrite all new patterns of behavior on your brain, which are you doing you versus you engaging in behavior based on trying to get you to do what I think you should do to make me happy. So my happiness comes from you doing what I think you should do. So I'm going to manipulate the heck out of you to do it the way I think you should do it. Then I feel good. You feel terrible, but I feel good. That's what we do, because we're desperately trying to be approved of and appreciated by others, as opposed to letting who we really are out. And it's like, I love you, but it's no concern of yours. I don't need you to love me back. I'm free. I just do me. And that's a beautiful sentiment. They did a study on that, and they did two different groups of people who were giving gifts. One was a hedonistic gift, where you give this hedonistic giving, where I give this nice shirt to you, and I really hope you like it. And does it fit? You like the color? Is it good for you? All that. So I'm hooked. I'm attached to the outcome. I want you to like it, and I want you to tell me you like it, and that makes me feel better. Then there was another group that gave eudaimonically, where they didn't give a damn whether you liked it or not. I just thought, I saw this shirt, I thought of you, I gave it to you, and it just got so much joy giving it to you with no expectation to get anything in return. And the two, actually, both of those kinds of givings alter the genetic code. One, hedonistically in a negative way, and eudaimonically in a positive way. So when I'm giving to you in a way that I want you to love me, your genetic code knows I'm full of it. You can tell I'm not real. So a part of you is not going to connect with me. But when I give you eudaimonically, your genetic code says, this is the real deal. Open up. Let's have a communion. Let's have a connection. And let's be real. That's what communication means. And that's the difference between doing you and doing them.
But the genetic code is the result of the energy in the nadis, and it's not the other way around. No, it's the consciousness makes the matter.
Right, absolutely. Because the matter, that's the first level of survival. We get a bunch of mutated bugs coming out of our environment because they were sprayed. Those bugs will transfer their genetic material to our gut bugs. Our gut bugs will transfer that genetic material to our genetic code to tell our genetic code, there's some weird glyphosate out there. You guys better get ready to keep the species alive because the bugs want us around, right? That's called horizontal transfer of genetic material. It's a hard science kind of a thing. And it's real. And we do it. And that's how we survive. And the bugs are in charge of it.
God, I feel like I'm interviewing an encyclopedia. It's fantastic. You speak so clearly about everything. You've got all these facts and figures at your fingertips. It's incredible. Well, I think people have got so much from this. I certainly have. And you're an inspiration, Dr. John. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. And I for one really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I love it, and I feel so blessed to be able to have found what I want to do when I grow up, which is to do exactly what I'm doing, which is just great.
Yeah, well, luckily, as I said, I already have the song done on this one. I wrote an album based on Ashtanga Hridayam of the old sutras, and I put them in modern pop. But I'm going to re-record it because I did it as acoustic album. So I'm going to re-record it for this podcast, and I'll send you a copy when it's done. And you feel free to use it. Just maybe you have some patients with bad armor. You could just give them the CD instead of save yourself half an hour of explaining it again.
That'd be cool. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's so kind and generous of you. Really. Thank you.
There are two digestive concepts that will turn your world around. They determine both the length and the quality of your life. Understand both sides. It's Agni versus Ama. The fire of Agni is enzymes, hot, light, dry, and penetrating. You're not simply what you eat, only what you metabolize. When there's indigestion, some armor gets left behind. At any of the stages, from Rasa through to Shukra, if it can't process the food into a dhatu or a mula, then there's malabsorption, some armor gets left behind. When there's too much armor inside, you're guaranteed to feel ill at ease. It's the soil for disease. Armor is the toxins, cold, heavy, oily, dull. How bad has it become? Check the map up on your tongue. As it slowly accumulates, the flame of Agni goes down. Help it with cold water, feed it eating late, then have an early breakfast. The bad mixing takes place. Whenever you eat without hunger, the flame of Agni goes down. If your Agni becomes too weak, you're guaranteed to feel ill at ease. The door's open for disease.
Thanks for tuning in. Glad you enjoyed the show. Please share it with other people. Rate and review it on your podcast app. And search out the song on any of the major music services or download directly from podsongs.com. That's the best way to support us. Thanks to Maurizio Sarnicola and Massimino Vodza for working with me on the music, and Dori Verba, my researcher. And thanks to you, the listener. See you next time.